Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to another Tackling Taboos podcast sponsored by the Openreach Ethnic Diversity Network. My name is Stephen Adubafor. I'll be your resident host for today. As always, I'm back again with another one, and I've got three amazing guests. Look, they're smiling already. They're beautiful. I'm seeing the Colgates coming out already, so it's going to be another good conversation. So, and we are honing in this episode on the theme of South Asian Heritage Month, which we are coming to the end of, and it's been a very reflective month. It's been a month of celebration and a month of learning as well for this community and the wider community. So really looking forward to getting into this conversation with our three amazing guests. I'll introduce them and then we can get into the conversation. So, well, I'll introduce their names and I'll let them maybe give a bit of a one-liner about themselves. So I'll first introduce Manasi. Hello.
Hi everyone, my name's Manasi and I am a senior HR business partner in BT Group and the chair of the EDN BT Group.
Is it? Lovely to have you on, Manasi. And Raj, I'll introduce you next.
Hi, Stephen. I am a person that thinks about closing exchanges and getting off PSTN in the commercial team during my day job. And I, like Manasi, but on the Openreach side, the chair of the Ethnic Diversity Network.
Amazing. Welcome on board, Raj. And last but absolutely and certainly not least, Jazz.
Hi, I'm Jazz. I am a HR, people and culture, whatever you want to call it, practice professional. So I work closely with diversity, wellbeing, and all of those other good stuff. And I'm also part of the EDN committee in Openreach.
Amazing. Welcome, Jazz. And yeah, thank you all once again for joining for this conversation. And just a word to the listeners or the watchers at home, like please share any comments you have on this discussion in the chat of our new platform, Viva Engage, or the YouTube page where this is going, because we really welcome the conversation and the discussion and even any questions that you want to have to follow on from this. This is what building this community is about, and allowing this platform, which has these voices, to be shown to the wider community. So it's all about you guys. We're going to talk for the next half an hour, but we want to hear from you going forward. So just a flag for that. But one of the main topics we wanted to kind of get our teeth stuck into first was heritage and tradition, being from a South Asian heritage background, and what I guess that means to our panelists who are here. So I'm going to flip the script a little bit. I'm going to go to Jazz first to, I guess, give us a little one-liner or a little intro as to what that means to you from your personal background.
I think my heritage is, so I'm Punjabi. I think that is really important to me. I think especially when I went to university, for example, it made quite a difference. So I grew up in Birmingham. There's a lot of South Asians from where I grew up, and I was always surrounded by them and my friends and my family. And then I went to uni and I made a lot of friends outside of my culture. And obviously not a problem. I love my friends. It just highlighted some of the bigger differences that I think I didn't really notice in the past. And it could have made me be a bit more wary and wanting to hide my heritage, hide my culture a little bit more, but actually it made me want to celebrate it. So I do little things like I wear my jump gear, like to work, and when I go out with my friends and things like that, I play Bhangra music to them. I introduce them to Bollywood films. I do all of these like little things that just help me bring that heritage a bit more forwards. And then in terms of traditions, we have all of our holidays. So Diwali, we just had Rakhi. We celebrate Gurpurb every year. So my grandma hosts a Gandpa at the Gurdwara. So that is like a 3-day kind of celebration, celebrating the birth of Guru Nanak. And we do all of those things every year. And then I also have all my little superstitions that I think are traditions. Other people might think I'm a bit weird for them, but don't leave the house if you sneeze, for example. Like you got to eat some chocolate or sneeze twice, and all these little things that I bring to everyone around me, regardless of who they are. And I think that is, those little things is how I keep kind of rooted in my heritage.
Well, I've never heard that before, and I think Now, I'm going to question when hay fever season is upon me, I think I might
Yeah, my
permanently
sister has a hay fever and it's a pain for her. But
it's going to be permanently working from home like between April and September because I just I just can't leave. No, that's good. And thank you even for sharing. And that even triggered like a thought in my mind. Are all three of you were all three of you born in the UK or born outside of your heritage country? I guess.
I was, yeah.
No, I wasn't. So the weird thing is, I was actually born in India. However, I was born in India out of circumstance, not necessarily maybe a conscious choice on the part of my parents. So my father's work at the time, he was in a pretty dangerous part of the Middle East, in sort of like North Yemen at the time, and at the time the infrastructure wasn't that great. So for my mum to feel safe in terms of giving birth to her kid, she chose to go back to India to be with her family. So I'm one of those people, probably the outlier in this group. I was born in India, but then sort of went right back to the Middle East.
It's interesting because, and the reason why that came up as a thought was, I guess, how you maintain that heritage and tradition not being in the country where that kind of stems from. Because I can give an example from a personal point of view. I'm Ghanaian heritage, so African heritage. I was born and bred in the UK. I'm third generation, but there's been almost a bit of a new wave of like Africans and especially in the UK and other parts of the world going back to their roots, and like going on holidays to like Ghana and Nigeria, things like this, and it's become like quite a cool, fashionable thing to kind of do this. And we sort of have maintained that heritage and tradition maybe within our own homes in the UK, but now people are taking the extra step to like, actually go back and visit or to like set up businesses and set up homes. Some people even move back there permanently. So I guess more intrigued to see, like, especially from the South Asian point of view, how firstly that heritage and tradition is like kept within the homes, but then also if there's ever any of that like feeling to like connect back home and kind of see what life is like back there. I don't know, Raj, if that's to you or anyone.
Yeah, it was. Well, I sort of what Jazz was saying around weird superstitions. If I paraphrase it, Jazz, I hope I didn't say it wrong. But so, what is heritage for me is a really interesting question in itself. I was brought up in a very white area in Buckinghamshire. We, being Indian, was a thing we did at the weekends. Right, we went and found another Asian family. We would travel, we'd get in the car, we'd go to a house party or something, create a racket, eat a lot of food, and it was sort of over on Saturday night. And then you come back and then, yeah, you are the only Asian family, but not in a community. It was just life, right? And you were surrounded by other people that weren't of that heritage. So when I think about, well, what does that heritage mean to me? It is a confusing question to me, because the first thing I think about is, it means my parents. Because that was who I saw. That was who. So what does being Indian really mean to me? Because I think of myself as Indian, even though I have only been there a handful of times and not in the last decade, I hasten to add. And being Indian to me is about resilience. It's about food. It's about the smell of it. It's about knowing what, we would get like stuff sent to us from India, and you'd open up the pack. Like my Manasi, which is my mum's sisters, of which she has 4. They would send me like magazines from India, like comic books, these comic book strips, like with religious stories and like, I guess, mythical stories and tales of Hanuman and tales of Shiva and all of these things. And I remember opening the packs, I'd be so excited, and this smell that would come out, like it was like, oh, that's India to me, right? Which is also, by the way, the smell of things like chai. It's all like, it's not like, I don't think it's about, for me, it's not necessarily about individual things, but it's kind of these sense of emotions that I link with my family, the experiences. It's really hard to nail what that means to me. And as I say, really, the first thing I think about is family. So I don't think I know the answer to that question, even though it was the first question we've got. So I'm not doing very well here.
But you know what's really interesting about that though, and that even links to one of the next topics we wanted to talk about as a collective, was identity and belonging. Because actually, especially when you don't grow up in that like your country of heritage, like how does that then affect your identity and belonging? Because the theme of South Asian Heritage Month this year is roots to roots. So roots as in like the plant roots, but then roots as in and how it shapes your kind of life going forward. So I'd be intrigued to hear from like any of the three of you, like how then you feel like that heritage and tradition, whether you know it securely or not, then has affected your identity.
Yeah. Can I pick up on this one? Because it kind of links back to what I was saying, which is without wanting to sound like someone who's a little bit lost, maybe I am, right? It wasn't until I left home, went to university, that it was quite late in life that the person that you sort of like, Stephen, like you, Manasi, Jazz, that you guys have come to know, that this person came quite late, because I felt disassociated from the community that I was in. Really, home life, other than those Saturdays, was about work. I'd work at school, and then we'd work as a family. Like that was what we did. And again, when we go back to what does being Indian mean to me, a lot of it is work ethic, resilience. It's not necessarily things that you associate with the home country, right? It's not that. It's these experiences that are probably more about being a first generation immigrant. Maybe that's the story, but that sense of identity came to me late because of that, I think. Like, who am I? I mean, literally my identity, and only in sort of later life have I returned to tell me about my family, tell me about where we came from. It was in the last year that I found out that my dad's birthday, which I've known my whole life as the 4th of January, was made up because he didn't have a passport, because he left Pakistan during partition as a baby. They had no documents. He came here at what we think is the age of 14, and the guy that forged his passport said to him, well, what birthday do you want? He was like, I don't know. He was like, well, I'll just do the first month. And that's how he got January. And then they were like, well, what date do you want? He said, I don't know. He said, well, can't do one because we've just done January, so we'll give you 4. And that is how he got his birthday. And I found that out in the last 12 months. So it's only in this later sort of part of my life that I'm starting to figure out, I've only just recently found that I come from a blended like grandparentage, right? Both my grandfather and grandmother both had previous relationships, which is unusual for that time, So it's all of this. So who am I? Has only come to me later. So yeah, it's an interesting one around identity for me.
Can I add you've triggered that kind of thought in me as well. My granddad's the same, but his was the 1st of the 1st. They were not that creative. They just gave him 1st of Jan as his birthday. But I think the community piece is so important. I would say that is actually one of the things that I've noticed that I actually really love about our heritage is the fact that we are so big on community. And I think a lot of my friends, for example, they don't always put family first, and that is just natural to them. But for me, it's always been family first. We do everything together. Like you said, we do the kind of house parties, go over to people's houses, drink loads of tea, eat loads of food. But even just, again, where I grew up, I think I was quite lucky because I did grow up in a very, very like South Asian heavy area. And the community there is absolutely massive, to the point where I've got a wedding next week of someone who is just a friend within that community. And it's almost like a local wedding because everyone just knows each other, and it's really nice to have that. And I think that might be part of it, is the kind of coming over, being immigrants, having that working lifestyle, sticking with who you know. But I think it's a really nice thing that's actually been passed down, and I'd like to keep going in the future.
Yeah, I feel like maybe this is where I come in, and I've been a little bit quiet, partly because, again, I feel like I'm a little bit of an outlier in this group. So I was predominantly raised in the Middle East because my dad's work, he was a diplomat, so we moved around a lot. And I guess for me, when I think about heritage and tradition, it's rooted from a really different lens. And not to say that the things around being with family, food. That's certainly how I think I keep my identity today. And I think it's how I continue to sort of like express appreciation and love for people in my life. Like there's nothing I love more than inviting 4 people over for dinner, cooking for 15, and then being like, here's a takeaway box, and now you have to take all this food away with you. So like I know that is definitely rooted in being Indian, being South Asian. I think for me, partly because of the nature of my dad's work, the fact that he was trained in the Indian civil service, which is more or less sort of like built on the backbone of the British civil service, that was the sort of pre-independent, administrative bodies. I think it's rooted in the sense of like my dad had a very strong sense of Indian patriotism, which is odd when you don't live in India, but you have to carry the flag of India wherever you go. And I think so, in some respects, I sometimes just refer to myself like a diplomatic rugrat. Like you grow up with all kinds of people because of just the nature of my dad's work. You've met people from all over the world. But I think you had a very strong anchor back to your roots because my dad was carrying the flag for India. So, for us, it meant like even though we went to international schools, we had to go to Hindi school. So I cannot for the life of me write Hindi, but I can speak Hindi, I understand it. A huge part of like learning Indian history. So I think probably more than your usual expat outside of India, I probably have a good sense of like Indian independence and the sort of broader history of the South continent. So for me, I think it's kept alive partly just through the sort of upbringing I've had. And for me, I feel like the way I keep it alive today is in just some of these cultural practices that you carry across with you, So for me, it is around family, friends, breaking bread together, and genuinely being hospitable and caring, which I think I do find like it's quite unique in some respects to South Asian communities, that the degree of respect and care that you have to show to your community, to your parents, it's just, you don't even realize you're doing it. But I think as I've got, like Raj is saying, you get older, you reflect and you try and rebel your whole life against what you think your parents want you to be. And then you realize actually so much of that is rooted in who they are and how they navigated life, and you could do the same.
Yeah, and then you have kids and you think, how am I going to get them to respect me the way that somehow my parents got me to respect them? That's a very hard question as I think about my own 5 and 7-year-old. Sorry, Jazz, you go.
No, I was just going to say the kind of the growing up thing. I think, like you, Raj, like I didn't always know about my own heritage. I kind of didn't really appreciate it that much. So I used to go to Punjabi school where, similar to Manasi, I would learn to read and write Punjabi. So I'm the opposite. I can read and write it. I can't speak it.
Oh, really?
Which I think is worse. But we also had like history classes afterwards as well. And we learned about Sikh history. And now I really, really appreciate the fact that we did that. At the time, I was like, I can't believe I'm giving up my Saturdays and Sundays to do this. Like, I want to play on the Wii. I don't want to get up early. Like, I just want to be chilling. But now, actually, I wish I'd paid even more attention. I wish I'd like taken in even more, and I wish I could speak the language. And yeah, I think I definitely appreciate things a lot more now. And I think as well, I'm not sure if anyone else has seen this, but I feel like a lot of our culture has been kind of westernized in a way. So people will take parts of our culture and they'll turn it into, there was this whole like Scandinavian scarf trend, and it was just a dupatta or chunni, and actually they were like, no, this is a new thing, this is a new fashion.
Yeah, the Scandi scarf.
Yeah, and actually no, like that came from India. And same with like slicking back your hair, and that's like a whole trend now of like, oh, we like a slick back bun. But actually, when my mum used to wear oil to school, people said she smelled. And it's stuff like that like we were almost shamed for celebrating our culture when we were younger, and so it does take time to actually appreciate it. So I think months like this where you are specifically celebrating your heritage, I think they're really needed. Actually, I know that's kind of not what we were talking about, but it's just
No, it's really
popped
really
into my head.
Yeah, go on, Raj.
Jazz, can I ask you then? Are you a you're second generation? Are you? Were your parents? So am I right?
My parents were born here. My grandparents came over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the second. Yep.
I
That was where I was going. I
can never figure out.
I can't figure
the order.
So when you reflect on your experience versus your parents' experience, what does that question bring to your mind? Like, do you think it's similar? Do you think it's different?
I think
also interested in the context of work, actually.
Yeah, so I think I don't know, like it's different because I feel that we were kind of set up for success earlier in life. So by the time I was born, my dad had a degree. They were both working, like my parents were both working, they had a house, they kind of had their life set up, let's say. Whereas when my dad was born, he was the fourth youngest. So he had older sisters. They had a house, but it was only my granddad working in a factory. So when my dad was really young, he had to like work basically like full time on the side of going to school, same with his siblings. And similar to my mum, like she had kind of a similar situation. So it's one of those things where your parents will be like, oh, like my parents used to always say like, oh, like you don't realize how lucky you have it now. Like it's so easy for you now and things like that. And I'll be like, no, it's not. Like this is so hard. I have to go to school every day. And it's like, actually, no, like I think, yeah, I was set up for success. And looking back, like my parents got me to do tuition. I went to a grammar school, like I went to uni. I did all of that. Kind of did things the right way. Like I then got a grad job and now I'm here. Whereas my brother, actually, he dropped out of college. He didn't work for a year and now he's doing an apprenticeship and he's pretty successful in what he does. And I think they are more accepting of that than I think my grandparents might have been in the same situation, just because they would have been like, well, we did all of this for you and now you're throwing it away. But actually, no, they're more flexible, I think, and adaptable to how life can be in the UK.
Yeah, no, well said, Jazz. I can relate to a lot of that. And this is very interesting. As you talk, I just see the similarities between like the Black community, the Asian community, especially in this country. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in a predominantly Asian and South Asian area anyway. So I got the good perks of the the Eid celebration, the Diwali celebrations, but then I could bring people home for the reverse in the Black community. So all of that, but then also, yeah, as you mentioned, like even being like third generation, like I do feel like me and my siblings were more set up for success than my kind of parents were. And I think that's ultimately what they wanted to do, right? They wanted to come here, stabilize, and actually give us like the better life than what they had. And of course, like all of us kind of getting to the age where we have kids and like we want to even let them go higher than what we've even got. So if there's a foundation here, we want them to be the millionaires and billionaires if we were to go kind of further than that, not to put a figure on it, but that's almost like I'd like to think like what this kind of generation of our ethnic minorities kind of want to do. So yeah, I can really resonate with that a lot. And Raj, you started to segue into kind of the next topic anyway, so I'm sure you're going to be taking over hosting duties before I know.
Well, I hope not. That would be bad for everyone, you know it, Stephen.
But yeah, just on the topic of like roots to roots, and like we wanted to kind of look at roots of influence in terms of you guys being the amazing professionals that you are today. Like how has your South Asian heritage, like background, ethnicity played a part and influenced your route to, I'm going to call it success. You're all successful people in your own right. How has that played a part in your success today?
Nancy?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I've reflected on this a lot actually in the last couple of years, just genuinely thinking about where I take my own career. I think for me, there is, I find, in South Asian communities, and I certainly see this when I travel in general in Asia and South Asia in general, is around There's a sincerity without an agenda. I find that quite common in the way you interact with people. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist in other communities. Of course it does. I find, for instance, even Americans are very earnest when you meet an American. Like, I sometimes use that line that is from like a Bill Maher joke, if you don't add LOL at the end of a sentence, they'll think you're serious. And I've experienced like in tremendous generosity. But I find the same is true when you go to India. And unlike you, Raj, like after a 14-year gap, I went to India this February because a friend of mine was getting married. It was an interracial marriage. Like, she was getting married to a Welsh chap. So it was really bizarre to see the Wales flag flying in Udaipur in a castle. But that was, that was a celebration. And again, it's that sincerity without an agenda. And I think that's certainly how I carry myself at work. I like to bring, and in any work, any job I've done, I bring my whole self. I don't have this sort of like, I'm going to couch myself and reserve myself to try and mold and fit in. It's a bit like, well, this is who I am. Take me at face value. This is what I bring to the table. And I'm quite relaxed about how then that is received. And that has been my experience also dealing with like working and being around South Asians when you go back home, because, it's just a different culture.
Yeah, and I recognise exactly what you're saying, Manasi, because so I will just I'm going to do a bit of both, if I may, which is because this is a wonderfully positive story that we're creating here, and I believe it, right? I believe it, and we all believe it. But that sincerity that I absolutely recognise, which I think I carry too. And Jazz, maybe I would say it probably about you as well. And I think so many of us see it in folks from our community. There is a thing around how that's perceived, actually, in terms of leadership. Because when we've seen it, I've seen it. So I've seen leadership with sincerity from someone with a South Asian background, which is my mum. So my mum ran her own business. God knows how she did it. She suddenly took over an old people's home, bought it, sold the family home, built the business up, and led it for years. And so I've seen that leadership with sincerity, and I've seen it work. I know it can work, and that's how I want to lead. But I think one thing that I do think is it doesn't naturally sit with what is currently, when we talk about executive presence and gravitas and all those things that cover up a model that brings folks to mind of who is a leader and who isn't. I feel like that has yet to break through. It's a new way of leading. And part of one thing we all need to do is to prove that different way, a different way of leading works. And I see it in you, Manasi, and I'm sure we'll see it as I get to continue to work with you, Jazz, as well, because it's something we've got to do. These words that we say, bring your whole self to work, be your real self, all of this has to mean something. And what it has to mean is we have to unravel, doing things the same way doesn't necessarily get you different results. In fact, it won't ever get you different results, and we need better and different results. So doing things in a different way is really important. But sorry, just to go back to the questions, because it's just so stimulating, this conversation, Stephen. So apologies. But to me, it's about integrity, and sincerity is a really good word, integrity and grit. And it's really, this is probably the interesting thing for me, which is something that feels very South Asian. And I don't know, again, maybe it's an immigrant thing, right? Because I know maybe in my mind it's South Asian, but actually it's an immigrant thing, is sincerity alongside grit. Right, so you don't have to, in order to have grit and resilience and be strong and direct, you can also do it with sincerity, softness, and empathy. And that feels to me, because of where I come from, it feels to me as part of my identity and my heritage. I don't know if that's true. It could be yeah. So
absolutely the same.
That's what it means to me. It's a combination of these things. I think if I read, and I have done, right, I do listen to these podcasts and I read these books about leadership, I don't see those things in combination reading back to me in terms of a leadership style, but that's what I want to be. And I guess that's where we get to in terms of where my heritage and my work come together, what it means to me. How about you, Jazz?
Yeah, Jazz, please feel free. You started to touch on it already, but you can expand.
Yeah, I think it's like a really cliche thing, I guess, to say, but it is that whole thing of like representation matters. Like I just feel like it is really nice to see people that look like you. But I also agree with what you're saying, Raj, about like we've got to do something different because otherwise we're not going to see that change. So it is a case of there's not much there is representation. There could be more. So then why don't we be that representation? Like, why don't we be that change? Like, why don't we go for those jobs? And yeah, what is it that's holding us back? Is it that we don't feel confident enough to do it? Is it that, yeah, we're not seeing it, so we don't think that we could be that person? Like, I don't know what it is. I'm not here to like answer that question, but I just think I remember I think Surinder might not want me telling the story, but oh well. When I first joined on the grad scheme, I was part of SD, and Surinder used to do calls with all of the grads. And I think I asked the question of like, how does it feel to be an Indian woman in your position? And I think one of the points she made that actually really stuck out to me, like to this day, is that being Indian actually, like, it made no difference because she had that in her. It wasn't because she was Indian. It wasn't because it wasn't any of that. It was just her as a person. She brought her best self to work. She got to her position. And I think we should absolutely celebrate our heritage and do all of that and bring everything we are to the job, because that is how we will get to that position, I think. Yeah. I don't think it's something that we should separate and be like, oh, but this is holding me back. Like, no, it's not. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said.
Those are the authentic leaders that we want to see. Like, we don't want to see people who have made it by having to put on a mask or be a puppet or something. We want those leaders who stay true. We are sadly coming towards the end of our conversation, and it's
just getting started.
I know, it's just gone.
We could do this all day, right?
Another 2 hours, and that's a testament to how poignant these topics are and how much we have to say on them. So I wanted to just kind of close with a final kind of closing question for you guys as a panel, to try and take us forward towards South Asian Heritage Month in 2026. And the question is, what change would you guys like to see, either within the South Asian heritage community or even for it, so that it's externally coming towards it by this time next year, basically? So if there's one thing that you could pin to be like, oh, I wish this thing could be different, what would that thing be?
It's a tricky one. Yeah, you definitely a head scratcher.
Oh, Manasi, I thought that was definitely one for you. I thought you'd have some leave for that.
I mean,
go on,
Raj. No,
No.
I was going to speak off the cuff, so this will by no means be in any level of sort of, won't be profound. I think for me, it's not so much a change, because I think change to me can almost seem like we have to course correct. Like, that's how I'm reading your question. For me, it would be around, how do we build on? So how do we build on what has been recognized and achieved this year? And I think, just broadly, I'd like to see, like, to what you were saying, Jasmine, like, I'd like to see both within BT, but more externally as well, I'd like to see more South Asian leaders in the news. I'd like to see that kind of positive role models. I'd want to see that built and sustained. I can't think of anything that I'd want to change.
Yeah, and it can be a build, it can be just something different, like to further the community that we have at the moment. So yeah, well said, Manasi.
I'm gonna steal Jazz's before she says it, which is I really like Jazz said about confidence, and it speaks to me, right? It speaks to me as someone who probably found his confidence much later in life, and the fact that, again, I probably have only thought about my heritage as part of something that allows me to be different and better than I would be otherwise. In later in life, that it's an actual benefit, and that gives me the confidence that I didn't have when I was young. And I guess what we want for it as a change is that everyone recognises that what we bring with us to work when we bring our whole selves is rich, and it's important, and it's of value, and it's of like commercial and strategic value if you want to get really technical into it. But also helps people feel better, feel good, and make us all positive. So I really like. I'm going to steal yours, Jazz, and go a more confident community, probably brought around by a more of a culture of belonging around us.
Said Rog.
Well, now I have to think of something else. I'm just going to reword it. I think it is just pride in your heritage is a really big thing. I think, like I said earlier, the fact that people are taking parts of our culture and they're saying how amazing they are now, when we wanted to hide those parts before. No, be proud, be absolutely loud about it. And if you are enjoying a piece of music or dance, or our culture is so bright and colorful, and I just feel like it should just be out there, and the world is so great at the moment, and it's just nice to have that bit of color added to it, I would say.
That's
wow, what a lovely note to end the podcast on. That is, you couldn't have
mic drop.
Yeah. No, that is amazing. I want to thank you three massively for your time, your contributions, your authentic stories, just being yourselves in this conversation. I want to thank all the listeners and the viewers for watching, and as said at the top of the show, please leave your comments, please like and engage with the post internally on Viva Engage, and externally on our YouTube page, and interact with us as a panel and as a group, and we will by all means get back to you as well. Thank you all once again. I've been your host, Stephen, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.